Good afternoon. Just before I walk into this slide, I've just come back from being at the beach and the Oil and Wildlife Centre. I've got two comments to make. One is the magnitude of effort that's occurred in the beach clean-up over the last few days, and to walk through and see the scale of effort that's gone on has been quite significant. The second one is when you go and see penguins swimming around in a little swimming pool, brings down to you exactly why you're doing this and why we have people and plans in place. And to see these little birds in the pool is actually quite moving. This is White Island, picture of White Island taken yesterday. White Island at the moment has a little bit of oil impact, be it that the oil impact is the weathered oil that we talked about yesterday, and little tar patties about the size of power fritters that are landing ashore, and that sort of consistency as well. So they've been recovered by a shore team that went out there today. And as you can see, the offlying islands and some of the sheen around the offlying islands of White Island, and we also have the boat team just checking around those islands as well. This picture is an aerial photograph of some of the more consistent lobs of persistent oil that we're seeing at sea. If you remember 2 days ago, we looked at a fried egg shape of oil and a small lob of persistent oil. And zooming in on that photo on the next slide, you can see the consistency that oil has broken up into. And this is the weathering that's taking place. This is the oil that Bruce showed you before, being in a saltwater environment and taking on board some salt water. So it's emulsification that is happening, and that emulsification tends to stabilise the compound that's at sea. This is surrounded by a sheen, and the sheen, there's not a lot we can do about the sheen. The sheen generally dissipates through rougher weather, and we're anticipating a little bit more weather coming through the water space over the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you. The projected direction of the oil movement, if we can run this model. As you can see, with a bit of a northerly coming through and a westerly direction, there's the northerly taking place. We're seeing a lot more fragmentation occurring. This is the model that we've been running over the last few days. While the oil itself heads towards Tauranga, we then tend to see another wind and current influence coming through and just buffering it back off the coast. Doing okay through that again? Okay, can we just jump back to that slide? Sorry, can we jump back to the start of the slide? Thank you. Good to go? Okay, as you can see, the oil trajectory model is now being run, and that oil trajectory model comes under an influence of the northerly that we're expecting over the next 24 to 48 hours. Then we see it buffer towards Tauranga on the east coast, and then, as you can see, a current and alternate weather pattern that cuts in and is projected to cut in over the next 4 days. Will cut in and buffer this oil off the coast. That doesn't mean there's not going to be impact of oil on the east coast, but what it means is that stable emulsion, the patties that we expect to come ashore, will potentially come ashore, but also be buffered out to sea a little bit and just go through the natural weathering process. What we're doing about this, we have a shoreline cleanup assessment team that's daily sweeping the east coast out to the East Cape and just checking all these different areas just to make sure that there's currently been no impact, and that the model that we're running and surveillance overflights that we're running are true and tracking according to the picture that you see in front of you. So this is a 6-day run, and this is our anticipated movement of the current oil that was released last Thursday being at sea. Some indication of booming within Tauranga Harbour. Now what we're doing here is the protection and collection booming. It is a technique used to actually just guide the oil in and away from less sensitive sites, and this is the active style of buffering out oil, or buffering oil to a zone that's being protected. Now one key area that we're just receiving some reports on at the moment is some of the seagrass areas around Tauranga Harbour are being disturbed, and the key and sensitive areas here are both in the seagrass areas, also in the mangrove sites. And the mangroves, of course, are right into the reaches of the estuaries, and seagrasses all around the estuarine areas as well. And would really request the public just not to go in. If there's oil in or around these areas, let it remobilise and let it be caught by the outgoing tide. That's a key one for us. We don't want to damage the environment any more than potentially it could be by the oil being in the first place. And the other thing is, if we push or put responders down into muddy areas, we're actually going to push and train the oil into the mud, and we're going to have seepage out for a number of years, as opposed to perhaps days and weeks. Thank you. Some of the containers at sea, there are 4 pictures here. You can see the bottom left-hand picture is 2 containers locked together, washed up on the beach at Motiti Island. And at the moment, the Motiti Islanders are just doing the reconnaissance around the island just to make sure that these containers are still there and remaining in situ. The ones at sea are the 2 top pictures that you can see, and they are still adrift, and they are under the operation of the salvage crews, and as you can see, have been lashed together in the bottom right-hand photo, and that this is the corralling of the containers that's taking place. Now, we're still conducting the surveillance flights, and our mood at the moment has moved more into monitoring and surveillance. We're just keeping an idea and to check on where these containers are going. Thank you. And that is the slideshow of the response. Now, in case any HFO had been dropped here, or in fact the question was asked yesterday, what sort of sorbent pads are we using, or what sort of sorbents are we using? As I said yesterday, we're using the man-made sorbents, and these things are aquaphobic. They don't take on water, but they take on a huge body of oil. So these are one of the methods we're using to soak up the oil around the rocks. You'll probably see the oil teams out there, the iwi teams out around Mount Maunganui today, using these sorbent pads to soak up the oil, and they're also being used, I think, around Leisure Island. Now, at the moment, and just to re-stress, the beach area on Main Beach between Mount Maunganui Base Track and Leisure Island is open. The rest of it remains closed. We'll go through a reassessment tonight just to see whether we open up those beaches. We also want to see what happens over the next 24 to 48 hours in terms of any further releases of oil. Thank you.